This is what they call a crowd pleaser, ladies and gentlemen. This is an episode that everybody went buck wild for last year, so we're doing it again with the same delightful guest, my good buddy Josh Lloyd. We're going to loop him in here. Actually, screw it, right out of the chute. Good morning, Josh. How are you today?
Oh, Dan, how are you? It's good to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have you here. This is Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. I'm Dan Bespers. He's Josh Lloyd. He's RedRock_B-Ball, Locked On Fantasy Basketball, Basketball Monster. He is Grand Poobah. I am at Old Man Squad. I am a grumpy old man, but mostly in an ironic sense. Leave a pregnant pause after that one. Today we're talking how to win your head-to-head league. And I have like an array of general questions about head-to-head format. Everybody knows that I prefer to play 9-Cat Roto. I play a couple of head-to-head leagues because it's important to do both, especially if I'm going to be talking about it all the time, which I am. But Josh, you are a much more experienced head-to-head player. So I'm going to pick your brain on the best ways to attack it from sort of the macro, like 30,000 foot view thing. But before we even get into that, what's cracking, man? How's it going?
It's pretty good. It's pretty good. It's a busy time of year getting ready for the season with 6-7 weeks away or whatever it is from the start of the NBA season. So lots of stuff happening and lots of things to sort of keep on top of. Now, I'm going to we talked before this. This will probably be a little bit dry, but I want to start this off. So yesterday I was on Noah Rubin's show, and you listen to podcasts, and I listen to them at a fast speed because I'm crazy, right? But there's people do that. I got stuff to do. I got a lot of stuff to get through. And I asked him this question. He didn't know the answer. So I'm going to ask you this question because the same thing applies to you. Your theme song for this podcast, right? Did you deliberately choose a song that was a very, very slow song so that when people listen to it at fast speed, it sounds normal? Because what is going on? Because his is the same one. So yours comes this like, dun, dun, dun. Dun, dun. Like, okay, come on, let's go. What are we waiting for? Speed it up. But when you listen to it like at 2 times speed, it flows. It sounds good. It's like upbeat. It's bouncy. So I thought maybe this is something that people should be doing, playing a slower song because everyone listens to it sped up. But no, it's just coincidence. So there you go. I'm going to stop asking people that question because it's clearly wrong every time I ask it.
I definitely did not. I also don't talk this slowly so that people can speed it up. This is just the way that I speak also. I like that jam. So I don't know why, I always look for jams that like are really tangentially related. Like you could kind of hear Peter Gabriel's Sledgehammer if you squint your hearing just far enough. Yeah. That's like, when I think of how I want to enter a show, I want to enter it a Sledgehammer, but I can't do that because that's copyrighted. So Isaac, this awesome dude, has made a couple of beats. He did the beat for my old jam, Fantasy NBA Today, also. And I like the way it bumped. I haven't listened to it at fast speed, but now I'm going to.
I have to.
Yeah. And you sent me a clip of me accidentally leaving something on air after I thought I had not, and it was me swearing at 2x. And that sounds as dumb as you'd think it would sound.
I always forget, like, if I go to share a clip from my podcast, that I listen to it at fast speed. So anytime I share, people go, bro, what do you do? How you listen to like that? I go, I don't know. And also is part of it is that, like, to me and to Australians in general, Americans talk slowly. You guys just have a slow diction. We talk super fast. That makes it hard to understand us at times. We just don't worry about gaps between words. They're all one word. We'll just push them all together. Whereas you guys talk really slowly. So when you hear, like, I put them at 2 times speed, okay, yeah, everyone's just talking normal speed. This is how people speak. And then, I meet up with people in real life, and I go, come on, let's fast forward. What are we doing here? What are we leaving all these gaps for?
I am an habitual enunciator on top of everything else. And that's probably the baseball radio thing where I want every word to be super clear. Because sometimes, I don't know, Josh, you're getting into baseball these days, and that means you're listening to baseball radio. Some of that stuff is not good, and if you can't understand what the hell they're saying, then you're really up a creek. But let's get to some head-to-head stuff here. I sent you basically a cursory list of the things we're going to cover, and so we'll just dive in. I was kind of like kicking around what order made sense. Now, obviously, talking about league settings is probably the first thing that we should talk about, but I'm going to save that because it's fantasy draft season right now, so we're just going straight into that side. You have said, I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that you're really not interested in Joel Embiid this year. So using that as my segue to the front ends of fantasy drafts, when you're looking at the head-to-head model, what are you looking to do with your first say 2 or 3 rounds of picks? As it sounds like avoiding someone that could detonate your team completely is among the list of things you're trying not to do.
Sometimes my strategy on this is hard for people to decipher, because in the past, Dan, I have been the person who has always pushed back. I've always pushed back on the injury prone narrative. People are like, I'm never taking LaMelo Ball inside the first 3 rounds. Like, okay, you're going to screw up. It's not going to happen. And I'm never drafting Zion. He's never going to play 60 games. I'm not taking Kawhi. I'm not taking Anthony Davis. And of course, all those things are predictably proven false. Like, they all played games and all these things happen, right? And now this year, I'm not sitting here going, I'm not taking Joel Embiid in the first round. People go, what are you talking about? I thought you said there's no such thing as injury prone. But my thing is, and there's 2 players that fit this criteria for me this season. It's Embiid and Kawhi. Is that you have multiple knee injuries / surgeries on the exact same part of the same knee, like twice in the last 3 years. That to me is done. Like, if you've torn your meniscus twice in 2 years, on 3 years or whatever it is, on the same knee, I am not taking that risk. That is not like, oh my God, you broke your face. Oh, you broke your finger. Oh, you sprained your ankle. Oh, you pulled your hamstring. I don't care about those things. They're luck. They happen. They don't happen, whatever. If your knee continues to tear in the same spot, it's going to happen again. I'm very confident that it's going to happen again to both those guys. They're going to be extra cautious about both of those guys. And that risk then outweighs the benefit. Now, I say I won't take Embiid in the first round. If I'm picking at pick 12, there's zero difference between pick 12 or pick 13. So I would take him there. I would take him at 12 or 13, right? That is fine. But anyone else, like if Embiid hadn't had that second torn meniscus on that same knee, repeat problems, still looked really weird when he was coming back, I would have no problem taking him in the top 4. I wouldn't be worried about any of that stuff, but it's the repeat injury to the same lower body part. Like, if you break your finger 3 times, nobody cares. Right. But if you have torn and had surgery on that knee at the same spot multiple times, I'm out.
So you're not as concerned then about some of those other guys that people call injury prone in the first round, like an Anthony Davis, like a Kevin Durant, that kind of, okay. So what about this concept of like groupings or pairings? Is that something you're particularly worried about in the first 2 rounds?
Glad you brought that up, Dan. And I didn't prompt you to say this. I think that is something that we 100% focus on too much. It is just the way that I believe that it should be looked at is, if you want to talk about pairings, it's what do I avoid? What pairing is bad? Because you could make an argument for almost any player that you take in the first round that you can have 8 different guys that would pair with them in round 2. Mm-hmm. So we have this focus, well, I'm going to grab this guy and I have to get this guy here. No, you don't. There's other ways you can do it, because then in round 3, if you get a different guy in round 2, then your decision tree in round 3 changes. There's a million ways that you can do it. And we have this hyper focus. So this is the pairing you need. It's not really. It's more like, what would be a terrible pairing? That's what I'd rather avoid, the bad one, versus like hyper focus on, here is the narrow pairing that you must get to make it all make sense. Now, I'm very big on punting in head-to-head leagues. I do think there is a significant advantage to doing it. But in the end, the way that you win head-to-head leagues, I believe, is you just end up accumulating value. And whether that's value through guys that are synergistic, combinations that make sense all through the draft, getting someone who was off the waiver wire who turned in a top 50 season, that's all value. It's not about this, like, there is only one player that goes with this player, and that is the way we must do it. I think that is a very narrow way of looking at it, and it leads to tons of mistakes.
Yeah, it feels like, and I've even on the punt side, do you decide on your, okay, so like there are 1 or 2 players, I guess, where maybe the answer to this is yes, but do you decide on your punt after your first round pick? That feels very early to me in general.
It depends. Like, it's hard, a little bit hard for me at times to answer that question succinctly. I'll try my best, because, like,
you don't have to. I got time.
I and anyone who sort of sits and does and lives this stuff all the way through, like, I have a very strong understanding of every single player and every single player's statistical profile, skill set, whatever. So, like, if something comes up, I go, oh, I'll take him and he'll fit in here. I don't have to have that necessarily pre-planned, but that's not what everybody's able to do. I think there is a value in having an idea of who the player you grab in the first round and what their deficiencies are, and whether you want to lean into that or what you want to do. I don't think that there are people who are like, no, you never punt. You just take the 3 best available players or 5, and then you see what happens and then decide after the draft. Or there are people like, no, you must decide round 1. I think the answer is somewhere in the middle there, because like another one thing is going to come up in this sort of idea, Dan, is people will say, take the best player available, right? You hear that all the time. I'm sure I've said it. I'm sure you've said it as well, yeah? And then my like retort to that is, okay, who decides who the best player is? Like how do you know who the best player available? Yeah. Especially when you get like past round 2 or whatever, when the difference between the 25th guy and the 45th guy and the 45th guy and the 80th guy is like a bee's dick. There's no difference. Like there's no difference, but it is a very small difference. So if you're saying, man, this guy at 46 is definitely better than the guy at 47, well, you're going to be wrong. And that's where it comes more into, it's not even necessarily like an aggressive punt strategy. It's like, well, if this guy at 52 provides me some assists and I don't know where else I'm going to get them, and I'm at 39, take him. That's fine. Like that makes sense, because there's no such thing as best player available definitively in those positions. And we talk a lot, mostly, it's a majority, about category leagues, right? But if you want to even look at it from a points league perspective, and I think this is an easy way to find definitive values of players. I've been doing a lot of work on this. If we look at last year's top 12 players, the difference between pick 1 and pick 12 was about 15 fantasy points per game, right? And then between the top and the bottom of every other round after that, the difference in fantasy points was between 1 and 3 between 12 players, right? Crazy. So you can tell me best player available, like 1 point difference per game. That's making 1 extra 3 per week that changes that. So you can't, no one can, I'm not going to sit here and have the self-confidence or false bravado to tell you that I know who the best player is, because I don't, and you don't either. So like this idea of like you just got to take best available is another thing that I think gets you into a trap. It's got to be a blend of the two, I think, to really be nimble, be able to change your mind, because that very strict, I must take one guy to pair for my punt, or I have to take best player available. Neither of those things is right.
Who was the you mentioned pairs to avoid? Are there obvious ones that are on the board right now?
That's, I think, less. In the past, there used to be some real obvious ones, right? Like pairing like a James Harden and Andre Drummond in round 1 and round 2 would make no sense. You take the biggest free throw percentage contributor in the NBA and you pair him with the worst guy, and you cut out all of Harden's advantage, right? That's a bad head-to-head pairing. It's okay in Roto because it does balance you a little bit, but it's a bad pairing. At this point, there's not as many. This is just a complete negative pairing. I think it more comes into like, I wouldn't take Embiid in round 1 and then Kawhi in round 3. Like that's not a pairing that would make a huge amount of sense to me to do it that way. But in terms of,
unless your playoffs were in December.
Yeah. Well, that's true. The other thing, like, you look at Giannis. Giannis has got his bad free throws, right? But there's no one that I really see in like round 2 who's just like unbelievable. This guy's just dominating through in free throw percentage, and it would make no sense to put those two guys together. There's no one that really, or even the opposite way. Is there like a terrible, like if I took Trae Young in round 1 with his low field goals and Sabonis in round 2 with his high field goals, that's not a bad combination. No. That makes actually quite a bit of sense. It's not those absolutely avoid pairings aren't as clear. I think it more comes down to it, maybe the avoid ones after 2 or 3 rounds where you've built up certain strengths and certain weaknesses, and you go, well, yeah, my team is going to be last in blocks, so let me just grab this guy and I'll be second last. Like, yeah, what are we doing? What's the point of that? Like that's probably a bad idea, because that doesn't actually lead to your winning percentage increasing enough, I think.
Yeah, and I've in my eyes at least, and not to weigh in too much here, when you lean so hard, so heavily into, like, you take Trae Young, and a lot of folks are just like, well, I have to punt, field goal, and turnover right now. You don't. Like, there's a lot of paths you can take that get you out of punting those things. You don't know what you're gonna, like, maybe a couple picks down the line, like you said, you start to see, okay, my team really is quite bad at field goal percent, or my team is very bad at rebounding or something like that. And then you start to follow, like you said, that decision tree. But you talked about the next chunk here. That is going to be our segue to the middle of drafts. But before we do that, talking to Josh Lloyd at RedRock_B-ball. Josh, what's on the promo docket these days?
We're doing positional tiers at the moment, and then I don't know, Dan. There's a lot of stuff on my list. I don't actually know what's coming out when, but there is.
Tired when you said it.
I swear to God, I'm looking at my calendar, and I've got 7 shows scheduled for yesterday, which I only did 2. So yeah, that's going well. I got another 7 scheduled for today. Another 4 on Friday. So I'll probably just got to move a couple of things around to get them to make sense, I'd say.
So basically, folks should just subscribe, follow you on social, follow the show, and you'll get
Yeah, that
somewhere
sounds about right.
between 7 and 49 shows over the next week.
And the thing is, I haven't even looked at my schedule to add what I'm supposed to be doing coming up in the next week. So that's part of the plan coming up as well. So that, yeah, it could get a little crowded in there, I'd say.
Yeah, well, we're very grateful that you carved out some time for Old Man Squad, given, you probably had to punt show 7 to tomorrow. So that's very kind of you. Let's talk about the middle rounds a little bit. So now you've got your early rounds. You're taking guys that, again, make sense. Good basketball players. Take guys that you value. Take guys that, like, don't worry that much about fit, because the brutal fits are not as obvious right now, or certainly not as many of them. We're not in ultra late flyers. You and I have talked on this show about what to do with your later picks, which is upside hunt, hard. What about that creamy middle in between? The fourth round through the 9th round or something like that. What are you looking for in that zone?
Okay, so this is what I've also been seeing a lot lately, and I think it's probably the way when we're talking head-to-head leagues and approaching, is that, like, often that you draft someone in round 1, whoever it is, and then by the time you get to round 7 or 8, you look at that player and you go, I'm actually not as strong in that guy's strengths as I thought I was, right? Which is okay, because I think part of the way that we can look at punting and these ideas of building teams is often you have to sort of, early on, you have to go opposite. And that'll be like, okay, so if I'm really looking to punt away field goals, I've got to make sure I get some blocks and rebounds early on. Like I have to find these somewhere. And then the board will open up with all these other guys who fit those other categories I need later on, because I'm not worried about that gigantic deficiency in field goal percentage that makes others swear away from them, so I can sort of clean those guys up towards that back end. So in the middle rounds, I think it's maybe more important to start you're bringing in those strengths that you've got and you've built through your first round, and putting stuff and stacking stuff on top of that. Because if you get to that situation and you run into all problems with punt rankings and turning categories off to see how a play looks, because then if you always follow those, you'll end up with situations where no matter what you do, you punt all 3 small categories or all 3 big categories. It's almost impossible to avoid that unless you say, I'm taking a bad field goal guard in round 1, and I go big, and then guards and wings after that. But you can't go guard, because then you go, how am I possibly going to get blocks and rebounds? I have no shot. We're punting all of those categories now. So I think that, let's say 6 to 10 area of a draft becomes that bit where you maybe circle back to help reestablish those advantages from your round 1 guy with a lot of players that others pass on. And then you start to throw rankings or ADP out a little bit, because your valuation of someone might say, I'm not taking this guy, he's 130th because he shoots 41% from the field. And you go, man, I don't care. I'll take his 5.5 assists and 1.6 steals. That works perfectly for me. And then grab him there. Because like we said, the difference between those guys at that point, it might be 80 ranking spots, but it's not. Like it's the difference between 0.2 steals or whatever it is. The difference is so small that it's really important to know that difference. I think a great way that it's illustrated, I don't know if you ever go on the Dunks and Threes website with the EPM EPM stat is shown. On the right-hand side, it's got a distribution graph of where the players sit in EPM, and it does really apply to fantasy as well, where it's got the top guys is like 1 dot and 1 dot and 1 dot, and then like 300 players will sitting in the middle. And that's basically how fantasy works, I think.
Yeah. So does it just to go a little bit deeper on that kind of like transition between the early mid and the late mid that you were talking about, do those guys later? So in this example, I'll just try to put some names to it just to see if we can work through it. So you end up with Trae Young in the first round, second, third, fourth, whatever. You're looking to sort of address some, maybe not all of his deficiencies, but a couple of them. He's weak in field goal. He's weak in rebounds. He's weak in blocks. Maybe you find some bigs that are good at, say, 2 out of those 3 things and don't hurt the stuff that you've built up already. Like you don't want to put a big hole in your free throw. But then as you get towards those later rounds and you need to make sure that you rebuild on top of Trae Young, do those players become like can't miss types at that point? Like if you don't get the ones that are, say, like Scoot as a weird, very distant example of this. Like if you don't get him towards the end, did you then fail to build on top of the strengths? Do those guys become guys you have to take a little bit early because of that?
Not necessarily. I think the way that it works is that it opens up way more opportunities for you towards the end of finding these different players. And look, maybe you do go slightly earlier on someone like that. But if someone takes Scoot, you can't be like, oh my god, I'm done. Like my season's over.
I know,
Something
that's a
else.
bad example.
Yeah, but like I get what you're saying, because and I've had this mentality in the past as well. I go, man, I just have to get this guy. And you go, no, it's fine. Like something else will appear, and someone else will appear or do this, and there'll be other players that step up, and you're never going to find a 10 assist player at the back end of a draft. So Scoot is an interesting player who could get us be 7 assists, maybe he could, right? But there's going to be something around that area, and you do open up many different opportunities versus like so often the players that people take in round 12 or 13, if they're not really hunting up, so I'll use this guy because I love talking about him in this sense, is Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, right? He'll get you 12 points and he'll hit 2.5 threes with 3 rebounds and 2 assists and 1.3 steals, and that's all well and good, but like, who cares? Like it's fine. The value is solid. It's doing what it does, but I could pass on that and get someone who might be, let's say TJ McConnell, right? Maybe he plays 20 minutes a night, but he might average 5 assists. He might get 1.3 steals. The other stuff will be worse than what KCP does, but if I want to supplement those things and I want to grab 2 or 3 of those guys with my last 2 picks, and I get those players who then contribute 11.5 or 10.5 assists between them, that's okay. Versus taking that guy who theoretically is better, but doesn't really give me any level of boost there.
You know where I like KCP is if I've taken unhealthy, if I've taken risky players early or in like a draft only league. That's where I feel like he makes a lot of sense because you don't have to like think about
draft it. Draft only definitely changes that idea. Yeah, like because we just finished. Yeah, we just finished the draft only league, and like I was looking, my last pick in that one, I think I was looking at Noah Clowney, right? And I was like, yeah, I'm really excited to see what Clowney does. But in a draft only league where every player contributes all the time, I don't know what's going to happen early on. So I said, you know what? I would never probably take this guy. I'm just going to take Russell Westbrook here because I'm pretty confident he's going to play every game. I think he's going to play 20 plus minutes every game. And that's good. Like, it doesn't matter if Clowney might play 30 minutes in March, but you might play 12 minutes in November and December, and that kills you, and that 30 minutes becomes useless because I'm not using it. So that does change your idea of what you do there.
So how do you then look at the last few rounds? I know we're chasing upside, but how do you and my goal with this podcast is always about simplifying the fantasy game. What are sort of like the quick hitter criteria for even just isolating a group of players that might be worth looking at? What are, like, for me, I always like to say, like, are you looking at for minutes, opportunity, like these quick things that you can maybe fit together in a puzzle? And it's never going to be that simple. But if somebody had an hour to do it instead of 30 or whatever, how do you begin to isolate those late targets?
The easiest thing, Dan, and the most basic rule, I think, is if you are towards the end of a draft, what you want to look at is there anyone here who is a starting point guard with above 20% usage who plays 30 minutes? If that guy exists, that's upside, right? That's Kobe White. That is why I took Kobe White last season. So I went, okay, he's going to start. He's going to be above average usage. There might be shaky, but where do I find that player? Where does he come from? Keontae George is going to be that guy this year. He's going to be the starting point guard who plays 30 plus minutes. He might have some bad field goals, but he also might not. He might shoot 44%, but I'd rather that than go, oh, well, here's Max Strus's 16 usage and he averages 10 points, which is fine, but 25 Max Strus's will appear at other points in the season. 27%, 30-minute starting point guards do not. And these guys might not work out, right? That they might not work out. They might be terrible, and it might be a real drag on your field goal percentage. And it might be like he's doing these things, turning it over 5 times. All that stuff might happen. But I can't just find that player just appearing all the time. Whereas I can find the guy who is Derek Jones Jr. I can find Najee Marshall playing 26 minutes and going 9, 5, and 2. I can find those guys everywhere. They're going to appear every 5 seconds. Nick Batum will pop up and have a stretch where he shoots 70% from 3 for 2 weeks, and I'll use him in that spot. The high usage, by high usage, I just mean like there are starting point guards who might start at point guard and average with 17 usage with 4 assists. That's completely useless. That doesn't help me at all. But a 30-minute guy with 20 plus usage as a point guard, bang, that is just if you want the simple rule, if that person exists, get them,
What
because
do you
that
do?
is
Oh,
upside.
sorry. No,
Okay.
you owe me Jinx. You owe me a Coke. What if that guy doesn't exist? Is there a second batch of names to look at?
Yep. Then the next one, which is the easiest translatable fantasy thing, I think, is who's a big man who blocks shots with high field goal percentage. Who's got that chance to come out there, play 24 minutes, block 2 shots, shoot 67%? Derek Lively from last year. Carlo Makovic, maybe it's this season. Maybe it is Daniel Tice. Like, is there an opening there? Who's going to start in New Orleans? I don't know. But one of these guys will get some minutes, and that opportunity is there. One of the things that the NBA loves, right, is switching wings. They play the 2, they play the 3, they play up to the 4, they shoot a little bit, they can defend a little bit. And that's great. But in fantasy, that translates nothing. If a player's a starting small forward and he gets hurt, they don't just go, all right, back up small forward. You're going from 15 minutes to 35 minutes. They go, we've got 7 guys here who will play an extra 3 minutes a game, and you'll all step up and you'll all do your little bits and pieces, and that's great for winning basketball. If a starting point guard goes down, what do? The backup goes from 18 minutes to 30 minutes. If a starting center goes down, the starting center played 28 minutes. The backup comes in from 18. He goes to 27 minutes. Bang, you get this gigantic increase at those 2 positions. So they're the 2 things that I want to try and find at the end of the draft. These other, and you'll know this from drafting, is that like shooting guards, small forwards, it's very sparse until you get to the last rounds. It's like every player is a shooting guard or a small forward in those last few rounds, because they average 10 points and they hit 2 threes and they have 4 rebounds and they have 2 assists and they get a steal, and you go, that's all so well and good, and that's great. And for a roto league, that adds up during the season. But
they're all of those players are on the Warriors too, by the way. Every single one of them.
Yep. This is, hey, if Kyle Anderson plays 28 minutes, he'll do this, and Buddy Hield will do this, and D'Anthony Melton will do this, and there's a million guys who do that. But when's it ever taking off? Like, it's all well and good if you want to just strictly look at this stuff from this will just accumulate over the season, but that's not really how a head-to-head league works. So I just want to see what happens, and if you don't take a flyer on someone in that last round, or not even last round, like I think once you get into your bench, just start taking pings of guys, because there's going to be randoms that pop up all through this. Here's a question for you. I don't know the answer, and you won't know the answer. Maybe you do. Maybe you're unbelievably brilliant. How many players do you reckon in a standard league get used through the course of a season? We've got 156 guys on a roster as a general rule. Say 1 IL slot, which pushes us up to 168 can be on a roster at any point. How many players do you reckon from the NBA total player pool get used during a season?
I haven't a clue.
3, 4. Look, there's 570 players or whatever that usually get into an NBA game. I would say in a standard league, we definitely use over 250. I would say it probably does push to 300, which is basically double the amount of players that get drafted.
Yeah, meaning a lot of these draft guys are ending up on the wire, and then the next chunk of 50 below that, and then the next chunk as we rotate through all of them. Yeah, I mean, this the last few picks. It's fun too if you look at the end of your year and just look at the last 3 rounds. Go back and look at the draft results.
It's embarrassing.
It's like 2 out of 36 are on the roster at the end of the season. It's nobody's.
Man, look at me! I grabbed Markel Fultz at 110. Oh, I'm set. Yeah, okay, cool. That worked. That worked really well. That was man. Cole Anthony, what a sensational pick. Yeah, okay, for 2 minutes. I'm going to grab Tim Hardaway Jr. He's going to hit 3 threes. Oh, okay, that's. I hope that works out for you, because it won't. So look, we're just going to move on from nearly all of these guys. So you just take the upside. Like, would you have rather drafted Sadiq Bey or Jalen Johnson? Obviously Jalen Johnson.
Yeah.
So we even though Bey was the starter, and I was picking Bey in a lot of drafts last season because I thought Chris Knight actually likes him. He can do something. I hate him as a player. I think he's really bad. But I thought the opportunity was there, and that was terrible. He was bad. He's always been bad. And I got fooled by my own stupidity. But there are certain ways to look at this. Yeah, like I always get sucked into it. Like 2 years ago, I was like, man, I actually think the Pacers are going to play Chris Duarte here. I think he's terrible, bad draft pick. I don't know why they would do it, but he might get me 1.4 steals and 2.4 threes, and then he played about 10 minutes for the year.
Don't be too hard on yourself, because we all did that with everyone on the Pacers that year. Should
have just believed in myself and said Duarte was shit. Oh, well, here's Sadiq Bey. Yeah, he's also terrible. But don't worry, Josh, I'm sure you're wrong again. I'm sure he's actually really good. Nah, he's actually bad again. I wonder who that's going to be this shit season for me, that I actually just am adamant is terrible. And then I convinced myself into picking him. I wonder who it's going to be.
We all have our things, and then Sadiq Bey was in that big chunk of players that I refer to as doesn't matter range, between 120 and 160. It's like, you play him, you want. I don't care.
He's the new age Harrison Barnes.
Yeah, he is the new Harrison, although he's out for a while. So Harrison Barnes is back to being Harrison Barnes again.
Yeah, Harrison Barnes and Keldon Johnson can have a battle to see who's going to be the new Harrison Barnes.
Who's the new Harrison Barnes? He won't give up that damn title so fast. Okay, so let's do a little bit of a lightning round thing here. Do you, Josh, change your approach at all as you get near the playoffs in head-to-head leagues?
Playoffs? Yeah, you have to, because we could sit here now, Dan, and we'd be 20 weeks away from playoffs starting. Well, not 20 weeks. Once the season starts, we're 20 weeks away. You get to the start of March and you're 2 weeks away. There's no long term. There's no I'll hold. There's no stash. There's nothing. It's like it's now. It's happening right now. So it turns into, how would you approach a week? What's the schedule look like? How do I stream guys in? How do I maximize what I'm doing? What's my opponent doing? This guy hurt? Get him out of here. I don't need him on my team if he's going to play one game of 25 minutes. There's no holding. There's no stashing. There's no what ifs. You have to change your approach. And the time that you change your approach depends on where you are in the standings. If you're sitting up the top and it's January the 16th, you can still coast, you can still stash, you can still hold. It doesn't matter. If you're 7th and it's January the 30th and you've got 4 weeks until your playoffs start, sorry to tell you, your playoffs are started right now. Like, you need to win every game. You need to hyper focus on these individual matchups just to get there. Because if you're like, oh, well, if I'll just hold this guy in 5 weeks, he'll be ready for the playoffs. I'm sorry, you're just not going to be there. So there's probably some formula about the inverse relationship to standings, positions, and dates is how quickly you got to transition that mode across. But whatever, like, if you're at the top, you're good. If you're battling, you got to start moving into, I got to go hard. I got to stream all my max moves every week, get everything out of it, cut dead weight, do whatever. You got to start to do that earlier.
Do you ever lean harder into 5 categories, just try to win 5-4 in the playoffs in that situation?
Yeah, look, that's just going to depend also on the way your team looks. Have a look at your past results. Like, are you just constantly winning these categories? Because there's also ways we can look at it. And I do projections. This is what I do, right? But you can go in there and look at projections and projection matchups and projected standings and go, well, I'm projected to win this 6-3. And then the difference between threes is 5 threes for the week. Okay, that is a coin flip, right? That is like, if something's a coin flip, don't count it as a win. Be very either hyper focused on getting it or just see what happens. See the ones that you think you're really close to being, I'll tick that off as a clear win, lock those away, and then work on the other stuff that way. So yeah, like, if you need to start narrowing down your focus, there's no point, I don't think, once you get into playoffs and go, well, yeah, but there's probably 7 categories here could go either way. Well, that just means you're just coin flip it. You're on the way out 50-50. You're not putting your best foot forward to say that you're going to win. So even if you're competitive in these categories, yeah, stuff can go wrong and he can have someone sit out and miss a game randomly. But you know what can also happen, Dan? So can you. And that's like that's razor edge stuff. And I'd like to be able to guarantee something and then still have a couple of those coin flip things versus just leave everything up to, oh, well, we'll see.
Last couple of extraordinarily quick questions for the great Josh Lloyd, RedRock_B-ball. When should your head-to-head league end? How many weeks do you cut off the end?
March 23rd is the date. That is 3 weeks of the regular season left.
3 weeks of playoffs before that as well?
Yeah, look, do whatever you want with your playoffs. But yeah, if you want to have 2 and a 3, that's not my problem. Like, you can make that decision however you want to do it. But finish on March the 23rd. I tell you what we need to get away from doing. And I know the NBA instituted this and Yahoo started doing it and everyone started doing it down. We do need to get away from the way that we name weeks, because it is going to be incredibly confusing. Because not only does this year we have, I'll say it's week 20, or 19 and 20 is combined into 1 week to become the All-Star game, right? So it gets combined there. So we can say, well, this is week 20 of the NBA season, but it's actually week 19 of the fantasy playoffs. And go, what week should I end in my fantasy playoffs? Well, it's 21 if you use this calendar, and 20. Like, who cares? We've got to use dates. But now Yahoo's also combining the week around the in-season tournament finals. Right. So I think it's week 6 and 7, or might be 7 and 8, I don't know, is combined into 1 week. So we're going to have 2 of these combo weeks. So we're going to hit week 22 and it's going to be named week 20. And we're going to be all over the shop. That's an extra level of confusion. Dates, March 23rd. We've got to use dates.
March 23rd. And I forgot my last question. So you may have actually just gotten off the hook because Dano has the brain filled with warm mush. Come on, Dan. It's in there. I know. Oh, I remember. IL slots. Do you go IL or IL plus, and how many?
0 reason for IL. Absolutely no reason whatsoever. I would want to, like, if you're running a fantasy league, why do you want to put something like that where there can be arbitrary situations, designations, rule changes, timings put in someone else's hands. Hey, give me the IL. I need the IL. This guy's been out for 3 games. Well, actually, he's only been missing 5 days. Yeah, but you gave it to this guy. Eliminate it. Why are you worried about whoever's running that at Yahoo? I don't know who it is. I know it's not our friend Dan Titus is doing that, but someone's doing it, and they're going to cop it. And I've told them this. I've told Dan this, and I might say that he agrees because we can have our private conversations. But it's like eliminate your problems, like the amount of abuse these Yahoo accounts get. Hey, put this guy on IR, eliminate it, but just stopping that being the default setting or getting rid of it. Like there is no need for this IL to wait for this decision to when this guy gets that, and this guy gets it before lock, and then the other team gets their guy after lock, and it changes what you can do for that matchup, and it impacts all of that. There's no reason for that. And people say, well, there's an IL plus scam where you can put them ahead of it. Like the way you limit that is you have a limit on the amount of ads you can make for the week, and then you can't scam for unlimited games because you've got a limit on how many ads you can make. And if someone is sitting in your IL spot that you put there on Friday earlier in the week, well, and then they become healthy, well, then you'll have these illegal lineups that you can't actually make the moves. It's really not, I don't think that's that complicated. The answer to your question, Dan, I know you want it short. Yeah, it's IL plus. I would put 3. To me, the fewer you put, the more unbalanced your league becomes, the less competitive your league becomes, because like we just said, the team that's at the top on January the 1st and they're cruising, and someone has to drop a second round player because they're out for 5 weeks and they just need a spot to compete and they don't have their IL because their first round guy is out as well. Well, that first guy grabs him, sits on him. They can afford to lose for 3 weeks. They get that guy back and they're unbeatable. What do we want that? Why do we want that to be the situation? Like if an NBA team loses their best player, they don't have to be. I know we're not playing real life basketball, but if they lose their best player, they're like, oh, sorry, Katie, we're gonna have to let you go. We actually just need a healthy body this week. You're gonna have to go. And then like he goes and signs with a minimum with the Celtics, and like that's it. Like what's for? Like just have. There's to me there is zero downside. Oh, it makes the waiver wire more fun. I just don't agree with that. All it means is that the top teams get better, the bottom teams get worse. They give up earlier, more unbalanced matchups through the season, more people disillusioned with the game.
Yeah, no, I'm in total agreement with you on that one. And like, it's weird that people say that they want great players sitting on the waiver wire. That
I do not understand it.
It's wacky. And then everybody also wants the teams near the bottom to stay competitive longer. This is a way to guarantee they don't. Like
exactly.
In any event, my more mush brain did remember that last question, so that was good for me. I feel pat myself on the back. Josh, thank you so much for teaching everybody how to win a damn head-to-head league. You're the man. Red Rock _ B-ball. Again, just follow Locked On Fantasy Basketball. You're going to get a crap ton of shows coming. Josh doesn't know exactly how many, but it's going to be many. Can I get you back here in a couple of weeks? I'll come up with a few more ideas.
I am sure that I'll be sitting in the studio. I know that much, Dan. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I'll send you a link, and if you click it, you're coming on the show. How about that?
I'll be here with a microphone, and we'll see what comes out.
Thanks, Josh. That was the inimitable Josh Lloyd. Red Rock _ B-ball. You guys know Josh. He's the lead fantasy basketball analyst at Basketball Monster. He is the host of Locked On Fantasy Basketball. And by the way, and you guys see me throw like rank boards up on the screen on this show, that's Basketball Monster's free player rank page. That is free. It's a terrific resource. It also loads really fast because it's basically just numerical data. They have not inundated their pages with, autoplay ads and what other nonsense. Sometimes you guys see me like at Basketball Reference, which by the way, also a very good website, but there's ads playing, there's graphics flashing, same things happening on Yahoo, all this stuff. Basketball Reference does a really nice job of paring things down to that exactly what you're hunting for, and definitely makes it easier for me to throw up on a video screen here. Thank you to Josh. That is how you, ladies and gentlemen, win your head-to-head basketball league. It's so simple. I kid. Obviously, there are a lot of steps along the way. This is why we're going to talk you guys through all of this ad nauseum here during the fantasy basketball run-up. During the season, we're going to be hunting for great pickups, things of that nature. And we'll talk to Josh again probably in the next few weeks, 3-4 weeks. You guys know I always run my 9-cat industry Roto League because, at my heart, I'm a Roto guy. And Josh will likely be a part of that as well. We will do a roto strategy show that will probably be mostly me because nobody wants to hear me talk about roto. It's like listening to a freaking sonnet the way I think about it. And that'll be coming up probably a little bit closer to the start of the season. But I wanted to get this one out there because everybody's booting up their head-to-head leagues right now, and so everybody's getting themselves ready. Coming up here on Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball, we will be doing a mock draft tomorrow. There is no question about that. There have been requests for 10-teamers. There have been requests for points league mocks. We'll get those going at some point. I want to get through each kind of team build before we sort of venture out into the other types of leagues. So we still haven't done a Wemby build, believe it or not. Adam King did on the show, but I didn't do it myself. I haven't done a Shea build yet. We haven't done a Halliburton build yet. We haven't done a Tatum build yet. We haven't done a KD build yet. And I think that's basically your sort of like standard first round names. Did I do an Embiid build? No, but we did a whole show with Rhett on how to work around Joel Embiid. It doesn't necessarily need to be a mock draft to kind of understand the general idea there. So we'll get mock drafts going. We still got 75 through 100 to cover on the redone Yahoo board. We've got some draft results that were sent in from NFBKC leagues. We're going to go over those on the show. And it's time, ladies and gentlemen, for the next round of guest interviews as well. Lots of awesome stuff coming up here on Old Man Squad, and I thank you all for listening. Please take a moment to like, rate, subscribe. You guys know the drill at this point. Follow Josh on social, follow his pod, follow me on social at Dan Vespers and at Old Man Squad. Again, those subscriptions and those reviews, they really do go a long way. Thank you all so much again. We'll see you guys tomorrow.